Welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into a deeply moving story about defying expectations, overcoming societal judgment, and finding light in unexpected places. In a traditional town governed by gossip and rigid rules, a 20-year-old woman named Seraphina finds herself drawn to a mysterious older newcomer with a heavy past. When their worlds collide, they spark a quiet revolution that threatens to tear her family apart. This is a story about the boundaries we build, the rumors we survive, and the choices that define our destiny. Sit back, relax, and let's begin. My name is Seraphina. I am 20 years old, living in a valley town trapped in time. Around here, life moves with the agonizing slowness of a winter stream. It's the kind of place where privacy is an unknown luxury. Neighbors don't just watch you, they catalog your movements, interpreting a lingering glance or a late-night walk into a grand saga of scandal. My existence was painfully predictable. My days were bound by an unyielding routine. I woke with the dawn, helping my mother tend to the household, sweeping away dust that would only return tomorrow. Then came the local academy, where I studied literature and history, filling my mind with tales of grand adventures and historic romances. Afterward, I'd retreat to the corner of our porch with a book or spend an hour or two with a handful of childhood friends who talked endlessly of the same local gossip. While my environment was completely stagnant, my inner world was a storm of restlessness. I harbored a secret dream, a quiet, burning desire for something profound. I didn't just want a companion to pass the time, or a comfortable arrangement approved by the town council. I yearned for a soul-stirring, transformative love, the kind that makes the universe feel vast and intimate all at once. In a town where everyone married their high school sweetheart out of sheer convenience, my dream felt like a quiet rebellion. Then the static of my life was shattered. He arrived like a silent shift in the weather. His name was Thomas. Thomas was a stark contrast to the local boys who spent their evenings boasting at the tavern. He was 31, 11 years my senior, carrying himself with a heavy, grounded presence. He was tall, with sharp features softened by an incredibly calm demeanor. But it was his eyes that caught me. They were deep, weathered, and seemed to hold a vast library of untold chapters. It didn't take long for the town's rumor mill to churn out his story. The whispers followed him down the street like dry autumn leaves. Divorced, they muttered behind lace curtains. In our traditional community, divorce wasn't viewed as a tragic end to an unhappy chapter. It was treated as a moral failing, a permanent stain that rendered a person damaged goods. They judged him entirely by a past they didn't understand. But when I looked at Thomas, I didn't see a cautionary tale. I saw a man of profound gentleness. I saw the quiet dignity in how he carried himself, the warmth in his brief interactions, and a heart that felt entirely underserved by the town's cruelty. From the moment our paths crossed, an inexplicable certainty took root in my chest. The town's judgment meant nothing to me. I knew with absolute clarity that a new chapter of my life had just begun. But breathing life into a hidden spark is a dangerous thing in a town built on judgment. I was about to take a step that would change how the entire valley looked at me forever, and it all started with a single silent moment in a crowded room. I spent my afternoons trying to escape the suffocation of my home, at a small brick-walled cafe on the edge of the square. It was a haven of rich aromas and soft murmurs, the perfect place to lose myself in a novel. One rainy Tuesday, I sat by my usual window seat. A book was open in my lap, but my eyes kept tracking the raindrops racing down the glass. My mind, as always, was drifting toward the horizon of my own future. Then the bell above the door chimed. Thomas walked in. He shook the rain from his coat with that same measured grace I had observed from afar. The cafe was relatively empty, yet he deliberately chose a secluded table in the far corner, away from the prying eyes of the staff. He ordered a black coffee and sat in absolute stillness, staring into the dark liquid as if searching for answers. I watched him over the top of my pages. He looked incredibly solitary, perhaps burdened by a profound exhaustion, yet there wasn't a trace of bitterness on his face. He seemed entirely content with his own quiet thoughts. Suddenly, as if feeling the weight of my gaze, he raised his head. His eyes swept across the room and locked directly onto mine. A sudden electric warmth surged through me, catching me completely off guard. My heart leaped into my throat. Terrified of being caught staring, I snapped my gaze down to my book, my cheeks burning. But the magnetic pull was too strong. A few seconds later, I risked looking up again. He hadn't looked away. Instead, a slow, gentle smile broke across his face. It was subtle, crinkling the corners of his eyes, carrying a warmth that completely cut through the chill of the afternoon. It wasn't a smile of amusement. It was a smile of recognition. I offered a shy, fleeting nod before he finished his coffee, left a bill on the table, and stepped back out into the rain. He was gone, but the ghost of that smile remained trapped in the room. I tried to force myself back into my reading, but the words had lost all meaning. I told myself to be rational. He was a stranger. He was over a decade older. He carried the baggage of a broken marriage that the entire town condemned. Yet, my heart completely refused to listen to logic. That silent exchange felt more honest than any conversation I had ever had. A profound curiosity had taken hold of me, a tether pulling me toward a man I barely knew. Curiosity is a powerful force, but crossing the line from silent glances to spoken words changes the rules completely. The next afternoon, I went back to that cafe, unaware that Thomas was waiting for me with a truth that could either bring us together or shatter my illusions entirely. The pull to return to the cafe the following day was an undeniable physical ache. My hands trembled slightly as I pushed open the heavy wooden door. I scanned the dim interior, my heart sinking for a split second until I saw him. Thomas was there, sitting at the exact same corner table, a fresh cup of coffee breathing steam into the air. Taking a deep breath, I walked over and chose a table just a few feet away. I opened my book, pretending to be absorbed, but the air between us felt charged with anticipation. Within minutes, Thomas looked up. Seeing me, his eyes lit up with that familiar, gentle warmth. He stood up, abandoning his coffee, and walked directly toward my table. "May I join you?" he asked. His voice was a low, resonant baritone, incredibly calm and grounded. "Please," I replied, my voice carrying a slight tremor of nervousness. At first, our conversation drifted through safe, familiar waters. We spoke of the unpredictable spring weather, the architecture of the old town, and our shared love for literature. I preferred fiction, while he possessed a deep fascination with history. He listened to me with a rare, absolute focus, never interrupting, validating every thought I articulated. Then the light-hearted tone shifted. Thomas rested his hands on the table and looked at me with a profound, unblinking honesty. "Seraphina," he said softly, "before we talk any further, I want to be entirely transparent with you. You've likely heard the whispers in town. I am a divorced man." He paused, letting the word sit between us. "Many people here view my past as a permanent shadow, but I need you to know that despite the pain of that ending, I haven't closed my heart. I still believe in the beauty of a genuine connection." His raw vulnerability caught me completely off guard. It was an incredibly brave act to lay bare his deepest scar to a near stranger simply to protect my reputation. In that moment, an overwhelming wave of trust washed over me. "My name is Seraphina," I said, looking directly into his eyes. "I am 20 years old, and I have never been in love before." Thomas blinked, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. He didn't speak for a long moment, simply absorbing my admission with a thoughtful, reverent expression. Then he nodded slowly, accepting my lack of experience not as a barrier, but as a sacred truth. In that quiet afternoon light, the foundations of something monumental were laid. We had built a bridge of absolute honesty between us, but a bridge is fragile when an entire town is trying to tear it down. As our secret meetings grew more frequent, the whispers turned into an uproar, forcing my own family to take a stand that would push me to the brink. It didn't take long for our private world to collide with public scrutiny. Thomas and I began spending our evenings together, seeking refuge away from the town center. We walked the forgotten paths of the overgrown park and sat by the edge of the rushing river, talking until the stars reclaimed the sky. With every story shared, my affection for him deepened. But a small town has eyes everywhere. Soon, the checkout lines at the grocery store and the benches outside the post office became breeding grounds for malice. The judgment was fierce and immediate. "She's completely naive," the gossips sneered. "A 20-year-old girl has no business entangling herself with a man who couldn't keep his own vows." My friends were the first to confront me, their faces twisted with a mix of genuine concern and societal panic. "Seraphina, you aren't thinking clearly," my closest friend warned me during an afternoon walk. "His past is a massive warning sign. He's lived an entire lifetime while you're just starting yours. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak." Their words stung, but the true battle awaited me at home. One evening, the tension in our living room was palpable. My mother sat across from me, her eyes heavy with a profound sadness. "Seraphina, look at me," she pleaded gently, reaching for my hands. "You are innocent. Thomas has an entire history, a marriage that failed, baggage that you cannot possibly comprehend. I am your mother. My entire soul wants to protect you from a mistake you can't undo." I looked at her, feeling a profound surge of empathy, but an even greater surge of personal conviction. I was no longer a child to be shielded. I had looked into Thomas's soul, and I knew his character. The fierce opposition from the world didn't drive me away from him. Instead, it acted as a catalyst, refining my feelings from a youthful infatuation into an unbreakable resolve. This was my life, my choice, and I was prepared to face the storm. Defying an entire town is one thing, but facing the silent fury of a traditional father is another entirely. Thomas knew that if he wanted a future with me, he would have to walk directly into the lion's den and face my family alone, with a confession that changed everything. The peak of our trial arrived on a crisp autumn night. The sky was an obsidian canvas painted with brilliant constellations, the air carrying the sharp scent of fallen leaves. Thomas and I sat together on a secluded wooden bench under the amber glow of a solitary street lamp. I could feel a heavy weight hanging over him. He took a slow, deep breath, turning to face me fully. The ambient light caught the lines of his face, making him look incredibly regal yet profoundly vulnerable. "Seraphina, I need to give you the full truth of my past," he began, his voice a steady hum against the nighttime quiet. "I never want a single shadow to exist between us. My first marriage. It was an agonizing mistake born of societal pressure. We were completely incompatible, trapping each other in a cold, silent unhappiness. We tried for years to repair something that was fundamentally broken, until the misery became unbearable. When it ended, I felt entirely hollowed out. I genuinely believed my capacity to love had died." He reached out, his hand hovering for a fraction of a second before gently enclosing mine. His touch was warm, solid, and comforting. "But then I saw you in that cafe," he whispered, his eyes locked onto mine. "Your lightness, your fierce independence, your pure heart. You brought the dead spaces in me back to life. You gave me hope when I thought hope was a luxury I'd never taste again." My heart hammered against my ribs, a cocktail of overwhelming emotion threatening to spill over. I looked at our intertwined fingers, our very first physical connection. It felt like a silent covenant. The noise of the town, the warnings of my friends, the anxieties of my mother, all of it dissolved into insignificance under that streetlight. "Thomas," I said, my voice barely louder than the autumn breeze, "your past does not frighten me. I don't love the man you used to be. I love the man standing before me right now. We will build our own history." Our hearts were locked, but the ultimate test of Thomas's resolve was still to come. The very next day, he walked up the steps of my family home to face my father, a man who had vowed to never let a divorced stranger near his daughter. The resistance within my household did not crumble easily. While my mother's worry came from a place of maternal protection, my father's opposition was rooted in rigid pride and deep suspicion. He refused to speak Thomas's name, viewing him as an older opportunist who would inevitably break his daughter's heart. The tension inside our home was suffocating. Yet, Thomas remained completely unfazed. He didn't react with anger or defensive pride. Instead, he met my family's hostility with an unyielding, respectful patience. Whenever he came to call for me, he greeted my parents with absolute courtesy, enduring my father's icy silence without a hint of resentment. One Sunday afternoon, Thomas did the unthinkable. He walked into my father's study and asked to speak with him entirely alone. I sat on the stairs outside the closed door, my hands clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white, praying that words wouldn't turn to violence. Inside, Thomas stood tall, looking my father directly in the eye. "Sir," Thomas said, his voice carrying the absolute weight of his conviction, "I am fully aware of the gap in our ages. I am fully aware of the stigma my divorce carries in your eyes. But I do not love your daughter casually. I love her with every ounce of my being. I will spend the rest of my days honoring her, protecting her, and ensuring her happiness. I promise you on my life, I will never bring her harm." My father didn't offer a dramatic blessing. He simply stared at Thomas for a long, agonizing moment before nodding once. But over the following weeks, a subtle transformation occurred. My parents began watching Thomas when he thought no one was looking. They saw the profound reverence in his eyes when he looked at me. They saw how he consistently put my needs above his own. Slowly the ice melted. My father recognized the rare, unbreakable honor in Thomas's character. Our love had survived the crucible of family disapproval, emerging stronger, refined, and entirely unstoppable. With my family's hard-won blessing, the path was finally clear. But as the morning of our wedding dawned, a dense fog rolled over the valley, and the townspeople gathered with whispered predictions of a doomed union. Our wedding morning was a breathtaking masterpiece of soft gold and crisp air. The valley was bathed in a gentle ethereal sunlight that seemed to wash away the bitterness of the past year. We had chosen a small, secluded chapel on the hillside, opting for a simple ceremony stripped of theatricality. As my mother helped me slide into my long, flowing white gown, I caught my reflection in the antique mirror. My heart was a steady rhythmic hum of pure joy. The nervous flutters were gone, replaced by a profound, unshakable certainty. I was stepping into my destiny. When the chapel doors swung open, I walked down the aisle, my arm nestled securely in my father's. I could see the crowded pews, filled not just with loved ones, but with the very townspeople who had spent months whispering our downfall. But as I walked, their judgmental faces faded into a blur. My universe narrowed down to a single point. Thomas standing at the altar in a tailored dark suit, looking extraordinarily handsome. As I reached him, I saw a glint of moisture in his eyes, his face illuminated by the most radiant, beautiful smile I had ever seen. He took my hand, his grip warm and fiercely protective, anchoring me to the present moment. The officiant's voice echoed through the sacred space, but my focus was entirely on the vows we had written in the quiet hours of our courtship. "I do," I stated, my voice ringing out clear, resonant, and entirely without hesitation. "I promise my life, my heart, and my loyalty to him." Then Thomas spoke his vows, his deep baritone filling the chapel with an immense warmth and a sacred promise of eternal devotion. "I do," he replied. We slid the simple gold bands onto each other's fingers, a timeless, unbroken circle representing an unbreakable bond. As we were pronounced husband and wife, a joyous cheer erupted from the pews, drowning out the last remnants of the town's cynicism. Thomas leaned down, his lips meeting mine in a tender, lingering kiss that signaled the absolute victory of our love. The vows were spoken and the rings were placed, but the true journey was just beginning. Stepping out of the chapel as a married couple meant facing a community that still doubted us, and our first year together would test whether our love was truly built to last. Today, I wake up every morning as Thomas's wife. Our life together didn't transform into a dramatic fairy tale. Instead, it became something infinitely better. A rich, peaceful reality. Our small cottage on the edge of the valley is no longer just a structure of wood and stone. It is a sanctuary of profound joy. Its halls echo with spontaneous laughter, deep conversations over late-night tea, and an overwhelming sense of mutual respect. We have built an ecosystem of absolute peace, a calm that easily repels the remaining storms of the outside world. On quiet winter evenings, I often sit by the fireplace, watching Thomas as he loses himself in a history book. In the firelight, I still see the same gentle soul who offered me a silent smile in a rainy cafe years ago. But now that smile is deeper, fuller, and entirely devoid of the sadness that used to haunt his eyes. The townspeople still whisper occasionally, trapped in their own narrow loops of gossip, but their words no longer carry any power. They are merely background noise to a beautiful symphony. Thomas taught me the most profound lesson an individual can learn. Love is entirely indifferent to timelines, societal expectations, or past wreckage. True love is found in the quiet, undeniable recognition of two souls choosing to beat as one, completely without apology. I married a man the world told me to avoid, and in doing so, I found my absolute salvation. We choose each other every single day, loving without boundaries, living our truth, and stepping boldly into a future that belongs entirely to us. Thank you so much for journeying through this story with us today. Seraphina and Thomas's story reminds us that the opinions of the collective should never outweigh the truth of your own heart. If this narrative touched you, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to fight for a connection the world didn't understand? Until next time, keep writing your own story and take care.